Shadows of Silverpine, Memories in the Moonlight. In the heart of a forest, wrapped in the embrace of ancient trees, Silverpine lay like a jewel of old-world charm, its cobblestone paths and red brick buildings whispering tales of yesteryears to anyone who cared to listen. Among those drawn to its mysteries was Ella Harper, a young journalist armed with relentless curiosity and a notebook always ready to capture the unseen. Her green eyes sparkled with the same fervor that lit up the streets every full moon, when the town surrendered to a more enigmatic aura. The tranquil day-to-day life of local folks like Tom Bennett, who toggled between espresso shots and electronic gadgets at his cafe, and Mrs. Agatha Whitmore, the widow with silver hair and stories veiled in half-truths, danced to a quiet rhythm disrupted only by the lunar cycle. Then there was Sophie Larson, whose canvases bore colors that seemed to see beyond the visible spectrum, capturing not just scenes, but the emotions woven within them. But this full moon was different. Whispers spoke of the Shadow Weaver, the ethereal entity at the heart of Silverpine's most guarded lore, leading its procession of shadows. This night, according to the whispers, the Weaver would unveil a secret so compelling it could unravel the very fabric of their existence. As the moon climbed, its silver light casting long shadows on the woodland paths, the townspeople, each harboring their own blend of dread and anticipation, sensed that their hidden truths might soon demand a reckoning. As the silver glow of the approaching full moon cast eerie shadows through the streets of Silverpine, Ella noticed a change in the air, a tension that seemed to grip the town. It was during one of her late-night walks, the crunch of gravel underfoot breaking the stillness, that she first felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, hidden in the shifting mists that bordered the town's ancient forest. The following day, Ella visited Mrs. Whitmore, whose cottage was a trove of old books and artifacts, each carrying the scent of forgotten times. Over cups of herbal tea, Mrs. Whitmore spoke in low, cautious tones about the beings that wandered Silverpine under the full moon's watch. "They can give you what you most desire," she whispered, her blue eyes flickering with a mix of fear and fascination. "But the cost is often too dear." Her words hung heavy in the air, like the thick fog that rolled over the lake at dawn. Energized by Mrs. Whitmore's revelations, Ella convened with Tom and Sophie in the back room of Tom's cafe, where maps and old newspapers were spread across every surface. Tom, always the skeptic, adjusted his leather jacket and leaned in closer as Ella recounted her conversation with Mrs. Whitmore. Sophie's eyes, wide and unblinking, reflected her fear and curiosity, her painter's hand absently brushing away an imaginary speck of dust from her colorful blouse. Their research led them deeper into Silverpine's history than Ella had ever gone before. In the dusty archives of the local library, they uncovered yellowed papers and faded photographs that told tales of past residents who had encountered the shadowy beings. One account spoke of a young woman who wished to be the town's most beloved, only to forget the very family who cherished her. Another told of a man who sought wealth and ended up a stranger in his own life, his memories of hard work and personal triumphs traded away for cold, hard cash. The trio also took to observing from the shadows during the nights leading up to the full moon. Hidden behind the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, they watched as a well-known local, his face strained with desperation, whispered into the swirling darkness. Moments later, his expression blank, he walked away with an unnatural pep in his step, a clear sign of his newly granted wish. These first-hand encounters and historical accounts painted a clear picture of the allure and the grave costs of dealings with the shadowy beings. Each story added weight to the moral dilemma they faced. The seductive power of wish fulfillment contrasted sharply with the profound loss of self that came from sacrificed memories. Ella felt a growing responsibility to shield her town from these exchanges, her resolve strengthening under the light of the moon. Yet, the more she learned, the more she understood the complexity of the townsfolk's desires and despairs, making her task all the more daunting. As the full moon neared its peak, Ella knew that the time to act was drawing close, the shadows of Silverpine beckoning with whispers of power and consequence. Ella stood motionless by Silverpine Lake, her breath visible in the chilled night air. The full moon cast a silver glow that danced across the water's surface, drawing eerie shadows from the surrounding woods. She stared into the lake, the reflection of the moon fractured by gentle ripples, as the whispers of the Shadow Weaver filled her mind, seductive and relentless. You can be more, Ella. Imagine your name revered, your words influential far beyond these humble woods. The voice coiled like smoke around her thoughts. Shadows gathered at the edge of her vision, forming and reforming into what seemed like the silhouette of the Shadow Weaver, a swirling mass of darkness with flickering silver eyes that never seemed to fully manifest. Ella's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the profound love she held for Silverpine. This town, with its quaint brick buildings and the secrets of the woods, had shaped her. Her mind wandered to Mrs. Agatha Whitmore, teaching her the legends and lore of the town with a twinkle in her piercing blue eyes, to Tom Bennett, who had always been by her side, his black curls and thoughtful frown a constant in her life, to Sophie Larson, her laughter like a bright melody that cut through the darkest nights. The price, the memories of these people in this place seemed unbearable. Yet the allure of achieving her dreams tugged at her soul with relentless persistence. She could leave Silverpine behind, become a name known and respected, her tales of far-off places captivating the world. But at what cost? Ella clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms, the physical pain grounding her as she struggled with her choice. The lake seemed to whisper back at her, the gentle lapping of water against the shore like the voices of all those she loved, entreating her to remember, to hold on. With a trembling breath, Ella stepped back from the water's edge, her gaze lifting to the moon that had witnessed all of her quiet, hidden moments. The shadows around her grew denser, more insistent, as if sensing her indecision waning. "I am my memories, my loves, my home," she whispered into the night, her voice steady despite the tempest within. "I choose Silverpine." As the words left her lips, the shadows recoiled, the whispers of the Shadow Weaver fading into a frustrated hiss that was swallowed by the darkness of the woods. The night reclaimed its stillness, the only sound now the rustle of the leaves in the gentle night breeze. Ella, with tears glimmering in her keen green eyes, knew she had sacrificed universal acclaim, but preserved something irreplaceable, the essence of who she was and where she truly belonged. Under the luminous glow of the full moon, Ella stood at the edge of Silverpine Lake, her breath visible in the crisp night air as she faced the Shadow Weaver. The entity's presence loomed like a dark fog over the water, its whispers creeping into the edges of her mind. Ella clutched the locket her mother had given her, a tangible piece of her past, her resolve. The whispers grew insistent, promising her untold stories and forgotten truths in exchange for just a sliver of her life's tapestry. But as she gazed back toward the shore where Tom, Sophie, and Mrs. Whitmore stood vigil, a wave of clarity washed over her. "I choose my memories," Ella declared, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I choose the stories that bind us, the love that sustains us. Your offers hold no value here." She could feel the eyes of her friends, their silent support like a beacon against the encroaching shadows. The shadow weaver recoiled, a hiss of frustration dissipating into the night as it retreated back into the depths of the forest. With the dawn breaking over Silverpine, the group convened at Tom's Cafe, the early morning light spilling over worn wooden tables and checkerboard floors. They gathered around a pot of coffee, each face marked by the weight of the night's decisions. Ella, with a determined set to her jaw, recounted her confrontation to the others. Tom's hands worked on a device meant to record and ultimately disrupt the weaver's whispers, while Sophie sketched out the shadowy forms, her drawings a powerful tool for their truth-seeking mission. Mrs. Whitmore, ever the historian, laid out old texts and maps, tracing the patterns of the being's appearances through decades. Together, they formulated a plan to share their knowledge with the town. Ella would write an article for the local newspaper, weaving in not just the truths about the shadows, but celebrating the stories of the community, of resilience, of unity. Tom would refine his technological defenses, and Sophie promised a series of paintings for the upcoming town hall meeting, a visual testament to their shared experiences. Mrs. Whitmore agreed to lead a town-wide discussion, using her standing and wisdom to advocate for caution and community. In the heart of Silverpine, beneath the protective gaze of its ancient pines, Ella felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were more than just residents of this quaint town. They were guardians of its stories, defenders against forgotten bargains made under the cover of moonlight. As she walked through the awakening streets, her steps were light, her spirit unburdened by what might have been lost. Instead, she was buoyed by what had been fiercely kept, the memories of Silverpine, etched not in shadow but in the light of day. As the last echoes of the town's murmur faded into the Silverpine night, Ella Harper settled into the worn leather chair at her desk, her fingers poised above the typewriter. The lamplight cast a warm glow across the article she had just finished, the words revealing the intricate dance of light and shadow that had enveloped her town. This story, perhaps her most personal yet, detailed the enigmatic exchanges with the Shadow Weaver and how the townsfolk, in their longing, had unwittingly traded precious memories for fleeting desires. Outside, the streets of Silverpine seemed quieter, the usual hustle of evening activities subdued as if the whole town was contemplating the revelations laid bare on the front page of the morning's edition. Ella could almost sense the collective introspection, each person weighing their past wishes against the memories they held dear. In the days that followed, gatherings at Tom's Cafe brimmed with conversations richer and more reflective than before. People shared stories long forgotten, and in turn, listened to tales that once were mere whispers behind closed doors. Ella watched, her heart swelling with pride, as Silverpine found strength in vulnerability, their bonds tightening like the ivy that clung to the old brick buildings. Yet, as content as she was, Ella couldn't shake off the faint whispers that fluttered at the edges of her mind. The Shadow Weaver's lingering presence, a reminder of mysteries still veiled in the shadows of the towering pines. What other secrets did the forest hide? And what costs would come with the next wish granted beneath the full moon's watchful eye? As she turned off the light and stepped out into the cool night, Ella mused over the delicate balance between desire and remembrance, realizing that sometimes the most profound strength lies in knowing what to hold on to and what to let go. In the heart of Silverpine, under the watchful gaze of the moon, life's most valuable lessons often come whispered through the shadows. Always listen, but never at the expense of your memories, for in them lies the essence of our souls.